Hello, this is Dr. Patrick Russell, and in this video lecture, I'm going to walk through with you the trip preparation process and give you an orientation to that so that you're ready to prepare for the trip, which should make the trip much more exciting and engaging and also fruitful. So in this session, we're going to do 5 things. First, we'll initiate a sense of group cohesion by meeting one's fellow travelers. If you're weren't able to meet in person for this first meeting, that'll be a little bit truncated for you. But we will also discuss the spiritual value of pilgrimages for the life of faith in this video. We will also talk about the focus and purpose of the trip by examining the program's goals, and then also cover some frequently asked questions. Then we will orient you to the process itself of getting prepared, particularly by discussing the meetings that we'll have, monthly meetings. We'll have 4 more of these monthly meetings, and as well as have a number of resources on Populi, the schools, the seminaries, learning management system, and we'll walk you through that so you know how to navigate that. As well as collect some data so we know what this first meeting, we'll try to figure out when would be the best time to have future meetings. And then we will also establish which participants are going to be earning academic credits through the trip and provide some overview of the coursework expectations, that we'll dig more deeply into that in a later preparation meeting. And finally, we'll talk about some key items that you need to bring on the trip or have with you. So to begin with, let's talk about the spiritual value of pilgrimage. I don't think pilgrimage is necessarily should be seen as a extra or ancillary to the Christian faith, because our very name, at least originally, our earliest testimony to what were Christians called before they were called Christians, that term Christians came later and was first seems to have been used by non-Christians to refer to these followers of Jesus. But based upon the evidence we find in the book of Acts, it seems as if early Christians called themselves people of the way. Specifically, the way, tenhodon is the word there. And I think that's important. That I think it wasn't just a way of living, although it certainly includes that. But I think they saw that becoming a follower of Christ was to be a pilgrim people, to use that very famous term from Vatican II, to be a people on the way, that there is movement to the life of the Christian experience, that even if you lived in the same place, there was this sort of process of coming deeper into the reality, a journey, if you will, that laid at the heart of the Christian life. And that makes sense because if you think about the forebearers of faith, the testimony we see in the Old Testament, it's filled with people who you could call pilgrim people who were on the way. So for example, Abraham, of course, being the classic example of being called from Ur and then Haran and then finally to the Promised Land. We can look at the journey down to Egypt and then the resulting slavery, and then the freedom that was brought about through the witness of Moses and his leadership that brought the people on the way through the desert, and that journey through the desert was essential in the formation of the people. And even when the people came back into the Promised Land and settled, they were continuing to be on journey in many ways in terms of how they structured themselves and organized themselves, but ultimately they were taken into exile. So once again, taken, if you will, into the process of even physically traveling in the footsteps of faith. And even when they returned back and in some ways settled back into the geographic boundaries of Israel and Judah, still the Jewish faith instituted this idea of pilgrimage by the fact that there were these major pilgrimage feasts to the temple. 3 times a year you're called to journey down to Jerusalem and participate in these pilgrimage feasts. So that and those pilgrimage feasts, if you look at them, they're connected to these sort of quintessential faith experiences, the encounters with God in the desert. In other words, pilgrims' moments, even though they're clearly rooted within agricultural feasts and harvests and what have you, they're connected to movement. So this idea that the Jewish faith has this complementary pattern of both being, if you will, rooted, since these were harvest and agricultural feasts, but also connecting those to movement, right? To ongoing journey, even though they weren't moving anywhere, but recalling the journey as essential to the faith. So I find that very fascinating, very interesting, that in some ways in our DNA of faith, there's this idea of pilgrimage. And of course, if we look at Christianity, Jesus, his ministry is defined by, if you will, pilgrimage. As you read the Gospels, he's always on the move. He's always journeying. I mean, he wouldn't have to proclaim God's will through that means, right? He could have stayed in one place. He could have gone to the temple and just taught there. Could have set up shop in Sepphoris or someplace, Sepphoris, and had people come to him. There's no necessary requirement that his journey be one that involved these travels. He's constantly on the move. Of course, that's a sign that he meets us. He comes to where we are. But I think it also is a sign of his recognition that the faith is a journey. And so he defines his very ministry through his journeys. And of course, that journey culminates in the ultimate journey, the journey to the top of Mount Calvary, to the cross. And of course, it doesn't end there. The final journey is his resurrection and ultimately and his ascension into heaven. And of course, then we are connected to pilgrimage not just through our Jewish roots and even Jesus' ministry, but also through the long tradition of the Christian church. Early on, people would begin to travel from Europe or from other parts of the world back to the Holy Land so that they could experience walking in the footsteps of Jesus and in the forebearers of the faith's footsteps. And there's a long tradition of this being an essential expression of faith. And in fact, in the Middle Ages, when there were moments where people could not travel to the Holy Land, either because of the lack of financial resources or even because of political situations that made it dangerous to travel to the Holy Land, you can see in the great cathedrals the building of labyrinths. Maybe you've seen at Chartres, what have you, these in the floor, these tile labyrinths, where you weave in and out. And this was meant to take the place of taking a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. This journey through the labyrinth was a way in which people who were not able to travel to the Holy Land were able to, in some ways, imitate a pilgrimage. So very important, this idea of pilgrimage, because we are people of the way. We have to somehow capture our experience of the faith through movement. And of course, it's not just limited to Christians. One of the 5 tenets of the Islamic faith is to make a pilgrimage, that this is crucial to Mecca, that they have to, that ultimately if a person can, he or she is obligated to go to Mecca on pilgrimage as part of the faith. And of course, I think since Islam in many ways builds on and grows out of Christianity, that's not surprising that becomes one of the 5 major tenets of the faith, since it's so rooted within not just Christian tradition, but also Jewish tradition. But even beyond the Abrahamic faiths, we see the same impulse towards pilgrimage in Hinduism and all the major religions. This idea that there needs to be this locating of your physical being in a place, that there's certain places in the world where they're a little more thin, as the Irish talk about these thin places where the difference between the supernatural and the natural are just a little bit closer. The difference is not so thick. We could call these liminal spaces. Limina is any doorway has a limina. It's that space between the inside and the outside, right? And I don't know if you ever noticed, but often when we have guests who come, some of the most profound conversations happen in the liminal space. They have their coats on. All we have to do is open up the door, and somehow there's some sort of conversation often there that goes deeper, farther, further than what had happened even at the dinner table. And so there's something about these thin places, right, that have a mysticism to them and a power to them, and people feel obligated or have an impulse to move to them to experience that in a new and powerful way. Now, what defines a pilgrimage? I think it's important to distinguish between a pilgrimage and a vacation. What we are going on is not a vacation. It's a pilgrimage. And I'd maybe pull out 4 distinct elements that distinguish a pilgrimage from a vacation. First, it has to be intentional. It has to be purposeful. There has to be a reason for doing it. And of course, often this has to do with a faith impulse. But even that word intentional is important. I selected it purposely because you're placing yourself in tension. If you take that word intentional and put a dash between the N and the T, you have intention. That we purposely are putting ourselves in an uncomfortable situation, right? We're stretching ourselves to the edges, if you will, of what maybe probably our comfort levels, and so that we can go, if you open up those spaces, that we can go deeper into our faith. So that's one key thing about pilgrimages, is that we're intentionally putting ourselves in this tension to open ourselves up to the movements of God in a new way. And I think a crucial part of that is it requires effort. There has to be, if you will, a sacrificial element to pilgrimage. In the old days, it was dangerous to go on pilgrimage. You were putting your life on the line. That's one way to be intentional. But also it was physically demanding. You were probably primarily walking by foot. You were going on boats that were rickety and not very seaworthy and were dangerous, at different points in the journey probably. You were very exposed, but it took, it wasn't like today where you just had the McDonald's on every corner and with the Starbucks, food was maybe harder to procure. So it took effort. It took work. It was hard. And, I think all sorts of pilgrimages to the Holy Land are valuable. And we will certainly have our air-conditioned bus. But we purposely structured this program to recover that traditional element, that is vital element in certain ways. So, for example, we will go on an archaeological dig. To me, that's part of that effort part. Not only will that get the dust that fell from Jesus' sandals underneath your fingernails in a very visceral way, which will make it distinct from other kinds of pilgrimages, but that effort of digging the dirt, I think gets us in touch with the traditional understanding of pilgrimage taking some physical sacrifice. And, the places we stay, while certainly clean and comfortable, they're not extravagant. We don't stay in hotels. We stay in hostels. Guest houses. Christian guest houses. They're kind of the level of your standard retreat center. So they're very nice in many ways. But they keep us connected. Let me take a drink. They keep us connected to the spiritual dimension of this trip, which is the next area that defines a pilgrimage versus a vacation. They keep us rooted because many of these, actually almost all the sites we're staying at are connected to some profound moments in the ministry of Jesus. So we are physically living right above, in many cases, crucial events in the life of his ministry. So this leads us more directly to this prayerful attitude that's so crucial. And so therefore, what distinguishes a pilgrimage from a vacation is that that's part of a key element of the experience, of the time that's spent, during the journey, that we spend time in prayer. And we will certainly make time for that and have opportunities for that. Every day we have Mass, we'll have morning and evening prayer, but even when we're at these different biblical sites, we will pause and give time for you to reflect. And we will follow the journey of basically Matthew's Gospel, and you'll be provided with a pilgrimage journal that will use different select passages from the Gospel of Matthew to help you do this sort of reflection as well on a daily basis. Then the fourth element of a pilgrimage is it's communal. When I was looking for a visual for this PowerPoint slide on pilgrimages, I just typed pilgrimage and hit the image search. A lot of the first ones that popped up showed one individual walking. And I think, you can do a pilgrimage individually, but I'd probably call that more of a quest. I would actually argue that pilgrimages require a communal dimension. You can start off as an individual, as I know many people who go, let's say, to the Camino, to the Way of St. James in the Camino in Spain, and they might start off individually, but they end up sometimes, pretty often, almost always, kind of joining with a group of people that walk together. Or at least when they come together at night into the different hostels, they develop community. Victor Turner, the sociologist, did a lot of work on pilgrimages and the social anthropological elements of it. And he says that this component, communitas, is crucial to pilgrimages. And I agree with him that they are, because we are people of the way. We're not individuals of the way. We journey in faith together, right? This was one of the crucial elements of Jesus's ministry and the experience of faith, is that we're saved in community. We're not saved as individuals. We're saved within the midst of a community. And so therefore we come into the presence of God more profoundly in communal settings in many ways than individually. And the pilgrimages are defined by this communitas element. All right. So there we go. I think that's what, there's many more things to unpack about the spirituality of pilgrimages. We will do that as we go forward. But just to kind of introduce us to this idea of pilgrimages and how it is distinguished from vacations, and why we do certain things on this trip in certain ways to accentuate that or to bring these elements forward. So the goals of the Holy Land trip, we have 5 of them. First one is to improve your ability to understand the Bible. And I think you will grow tremendously, even if you're well versed within the Bible. The very fact that you're there in the Holy Land, it changes everything, your understanding. I found this, I got my PhD in scripture studies and didn't have the privilege or possibility, because we had a young family, to take the time to go to Israel during my study. It's only years later when I started teaching at Sacred Heart, and I had a sabbatical, that I had the resources and time to go on a trip to Israel, and it just suddenly opened things up. And I thought, my gosh, this should have been a required part of my doctoral studies, because I understood the Bible so much better, just in terms of understanding, distances between different cities and the topography of the land, all sorts of things. Like, now I get it. So you will improve your understanding of the Bible, even if you're very well versed in the Bible. It will, I hope, deepen your connection with the forebears in the faith. Obviously, we'll get to Jesus, but we're talking about the Old Testament. We'll still have opportunities, even though we'll be hitting mainly Jesus' ministerial sites. We will still be connected to and exploring a number of the sites related to the Old Testament figures. And I think you'll grow more deeply within your sense of connection. And also not just even the forebears before Jesus, but after. because we talk about Christian tradition emphasizing pilgrimage. So you're in a long line of people who've traveled, and you'll kind of get this sense of being part of this cloud of witnesses, if you will, of people who have journeyed to this land to try to connect to Jesus and to the essence of their faith. And so I think that will also come alive for you as well. Thirdly, it will intensify your relationship with Jesus. I just think, have you ever had the experience where you have a friend and then you're invited to his or her home, and it just takes that relationship to a new level? Well, the same thing here. There's a way in which going to see where Jesus grew up, where he lived, where he ministered, that is like going to his home and deepening your sense and connection to him. And of course, that comes most profoundly as we walk the Via Dolorosa, the way of the cross, to that traumatic and dramatic moment within his giving of his life for us. So I think in many ways you'll find yourself growing closer to Jesus. And fourth, it'll strengthen, I hope, your commitment to Jesus' ministry. That because you get to know him better and more deeply, that there will be a desire to help him do his work now. As St. Teresa of Avila says, that we're Jesus' hands now, we're Jesus' feet now, we're Jesus' heart now. Here on earth, we're called to continue to embody his ministry in tangible ways. And I think you'll be coming away from the trip with a recommitment to do that more fervently. And fifth, I think you'll enhance your effectiveness in preaching and teaching the Word of God. I've had a number of graduates who are seminarians who say that every time they preach, they're thinking about some place in the Holy Land when they're preaching on the Gospels, and that it just enriches their understanding of the passage and also gives them resources to share more with their parishioners. And I find the same thing with teaching also. So I think there's ways in which you'll find that even if you're not a professional minister, how we teach the faith to our children or grandchildren or friends or relatives, you will find that this trip deepens your capacity to do that. But ultimately, I think the goal would be to deepen your love of Jesus. Monica Maizzi, one of our alums and also the vice president for communications at Sacred Heart, when she was a student in the Corona program, wasn't sure, kind of on the fence if she was going to go on the trip, and she said to me, "Give me one good reason I should go on the trip." And my answer was, "Well, do you love Jesus?" And I said, because if you love Jesus, then you'd want to go be where Jesus grew up and where he ministered and where he died and where he rose. You'd want to be with him. She thought that was a little unfair because it kind of turned all the heartstrings. But I said, well, it's not unfair. It's the truth of if we have the capacity, why wouldn't we do that? We don't all have the time, don't all have the resources. But if we love Jesus, would we not want to go deeper into that love relationship by journeying to where he lived? And I think she would testify that, in fact, it did deepen her love of Jesus. And I think everyone who goes on the trip would testify to that too. So those are the goals of the Holy Land trip. The program, as you should obviously be aware of already, but just to review, structure is we'll be traveling for about 2 weeks around the country, seeing various biblical and archaeological sites. We'll also spend at least 3 days at an archaeological dig. From year to year, the amount of days changes. Sometimes it'll be 5 days, but 3 days working at a biblical site. And as I already said, I think one of the values of that is that you really get a tangible, visceral connection to the life of Jesus in a way that you don't get if you're just kind of visiting all the sites, great as that is. It also will give you a more fruitful understanding about the nature of archaeology, which a lot of what we're going to be looking at in terms of how the archaeology gives us insight into the nature of Jesus' times and his life, you'll get a fuller sense of that because of this experience with the archaeological work. Now, to get ready to really be able to take advantage of this opportunity, we need to do some preparation. So in addition to this orientation meeting that we'll have, there'll be 4 more meetings, basically once a month. And we'll have 2 field trips, one to a synagogue and one to a mosque. Those will be organized by the Lux Center, and the dates will be announced by them. The meetings are really helpful in their structure to kind of get you a foundational level of knowledge so that when we go to the different biblical sites and I lecture, you don't have to keep saying, well, wait, what's post-exilic period? I can't forget what that is. We all have a similar knowledge base, as also to make sure we're coordinated and answer your questions so you're ready to go. We go to the mosque and the synagogue because you'll find the religious expression different than what you've ever had experience of here in the United States. And so to get, if you will, behind the walls of the synagogue and the mosque, kind of get a sense of those two faiths more deeply, will be helpful to appreciate the expressions of faith that we will encounter in Israel. These 4 more meetings will be on campus. Obviously, field trips will be at a synagogue and a mosque. Those are separate. You can only attend those in person. Ideally, you would come to the meetings on campus, but understand that some people have constraints in that, so we will always have a Zoom option, so you can attend virtually. And if we have bad weather, we'll all meet by Zoom. We won't cancel the meeting. We'll just do it all by Zoom in those cases. So those will be the 2 meetings. We will record the meetings that we do. So, there might be even that you have a scheduling conflict, but you can always then get the information from the meeting by watching the recording of the Zoom meeting, the Zoom recording of the meeting. There will be, as part of the preparation, various video lectures that I will have produced, and sometimes some readings. The amount of time you'll need to dedicate, and I would ask you to do that before the meeting, so we'll all have so we can kind of process the information and not deliver the information, so we're efficient with our use of time. The meetings, I will never go beyond an hour and a half. I try to finish closer to an hour and 15 if possible. So therefore, to do that, what we do is we kind of review the material and answer questions rather than deliver the material. So it's important you watch the video lectures and do the readings. That work will never be more than an hour's worth, so it should be manageable. So you're basically talking over the course of 4 meetings, 4 hours of work, and then the meetings themselves. But again, this is part of that effort that we talked about, what defines a pilgrimage, and what makes, particularly ours, in an academic setting, we want to make sure we have this foundational knowledge. And so that'd be an expectation for everyone, whether you're earning credits through this trip or not. We'd ask you to watch the video lectures or the readings that I asked to be prepared before the meetings. Meeting attendance is required of all participants who are earning academic credits, and they're optional for those who aren't. But I still strongly encourage people to attend, even if you're doing this for not doing this for credit. And maybe again, to go back up to the on-campus element, I'd also encourage people as much as possible to come on campus, because we'll build relationship that way. It's so crucial to develop that communitas. And we can begin that here before we even arrive at the gate at O'Hare Airport to take off for the trip. I'd encourage you to come onto campus for the meetings. And even though if you're not doing this for credit, you don't have to come to the meetings. You could just watch the videos of them if you want to. You're not even necessarily required to watch the Zoom recordings. But I'd still strongly encourage you to if you can. So, since we do have some work to do, I want to talk about the value of this trip preparation, coming to the meetings and doing this, watching these video lectures and any of the readings assigned. These preparation meetings, 4 more remaining, have 2 components, an educational component and an organizational component. And I have a picture here. This is a picture looking out my back deck. I'm privileged to and blessed. My wife and I live just above on a hill, on a ridge above Whitewater Lake. I don't know if you can see the snow-covered flat area. Well, that's actually Whitewater Lake. I recorded this video in the winter, so you get winter shots. Why do I have a picture from my back door? Because I just love nature. I love walking into nature. It inspires me. I feel connected to it. It uplifts me, renews me. So I'm just, really blessed by that. However, my brother has a doctorate in biology, and he's a professor of environmental studies at Carnegie Mellon University. Well, when I take a walk with him through these woods, we own about 3 acres, and then right across the street is Kettle Moraine Southern Unit Forest. And so if he comes to visit, or I go visit him, and we take a walk in the woods, he sees things I never see because I don't know they're there. So he'll say, "Hey, take a look at this milkweed plant. Notice the ants crawling all over these aphids." And he'll tell me, "Oh, that's a symbiotic relationship. The ants protect the aphids from the ladybugs who will eat them, and then they also milk. The aphids drink from the milkweed, and then the ants kind of milk them, and they secrete a liquid that the ants use as food. And so now I can't help but pass by a milkweed plant and look for, hey, are there ants and aphids there? There's a symbiotic relationship." So I noticed things I wouldn't never noticed before, or even knew if I did to know what it meant, because of that knowledge. Or one of my sons, he works at Viterbo University, and very well versed in ichthyology, the study of fish. And he's a great fisherman too. And so when he comes and fishes with me, he says, now he tells me all sorts of things about fish habitat and fish behavior and temperatures of the water and how that affects their movements. And I catch a lot more fish with him. But I also have a new appreciation, because when I'm on the water myself, I'm like, oh, look at that. I can tell the water is turning over for the season because of the color change that he talked to me about. And I notice these things, and I have a greater understanding, and I can, as I said, I become a better fisherman because of his knowledge. Or take my wife. She's pursuing a certificate in native plants. And at the bottom of that hill, one of the first things we did when we bought this property is that just down that ridge, that hill, was full of buckthorn and honeysuckle. These are invasive shrubs, trees. And we cleared them out, and now we had a area that was no longer vegetated, and we planted wildflowers to try to restore the land back to its original state. This was oak savanna originally, before pre-Columbian times. And so, to attract the butterflies and the bird life and the wildlife, we rewilded that land back to its original state. This is actually a picture that I took of her. As I said, just across the street is the Kettle Moraine State Forest, and we're hiking through there. Same thing as kind of like my brother. She knows things about plant life and that I don't know, and she knows all about how the trees communicate to each other through the root systems and all sorts of other things, and how the plants work together and sustain themselves. And again, once she shares that knowledge, and then of course when I walk in the woods alone, I understand it better. And as she shares new things, I have a basis for understanding the new things she's telling me. So and of course I pursue some of my own reading that she shares with me, and so that therefore I can even look at things and say, hey, look over here. What's this here? And we can either puzzle it out together, or she has a good reason for it. All right. Well, I'm using this as an example, as a metaphor, that the preparation work you're going to do is going to allow you to fully see things that maybe wouldn't be obvious to you if you hadn't done that preparation work. On top of that, you're going to see things that will call whole groups' attention to, or my attention to, that will help us all grow, right? So this work you're going to do is really vital to deepening your experience during the trip. So I really encourage you as much as you can. Of course, people taking this for credit are required to do a lot of this work, but even those who aren't, I'd encourage you to engage it as much as you can or have time for. It'll make the overall experience much more fruitful. All right. So all the trip materials, all this material that's going to help you prepare is housed in one place. It's housed on our Populi site, which is our learning management system. So, if you haven't been in education for a while, education context, maybe this is a new thing. If you've been in an educational context, this is sort of standard operating procedure nowadays. But, you might know about Blackboard or D2L or Moodle. Our learning management system is called Populi, and we're going to give you a little walk through that in a minute here, so don't get too nervous. And we'll send you links to various videos about how to access and navigate Populi via email, so that if you don't know anything about this and how to do this, that'll help you get started. But all the materials for the trip, handouts, the video links, different resources, these things called insight documents, which I'll talk about a little bit. Also the Zoom links. If you can't make a meeting, the link you'd go to join the meeting would be posted there. All that's on this Holy Land Expedition Pilgrimage Populi site. So HLEP01 Populi course. You're going to access that if you're a student using your SHSST email address. And if you're a non-student, you're going to use whatever email you submitted on your application form as your contact email. If you have any trouble, again, we're going to send you videos about how you do this, but if you have any problems accessing Populi, contact Ms. Kathy Hardy, who's one of our librarians, or Caitlin Lewis, who's the academic administrative assistant. They can kind of help you kind of walk through that. All right. And why are we moving? There we go. So, Populi. We're going to then take a tour. What I'm going to do is in this show, so I can do this. So what you would do is just go to your browser and type in shsst.edu. Now, if you're students, you already know much more efficient ways to do this, but this is for the non-students. You'll hit here at the school's website. If you go to the bottom, you see Sacred Heart Portal Login. So click on that, and you get then this page. And if you click Populi, you can click on that, and then you put in your email address and then your password, which obviously you can't see mine, and hit sign in. And this is what you'll see. You'll see this. It says, at the top there, home, my profile, my courses, contacts, academics, campus life, etc. If you click on my courses, you'll see what courses you're registered for. Now, if you're not going to take this experience for credit, you won't see all of these. You'll only see this one right here. We have 3, but really, even for those taking the courses, all you have to worry about is this website right here. Don't worry about these 2. These are just kind of shells to register for me to register grades in. So you just click on HLEP01, Holy Land Expedition and Pilgrimage, and you get to this landing page. So you're now into the course site itself. And you can see that over here, you have these sidebars with different information. Yours might look a little different based upon whether you're enrolled or not in terms of earning credit. And also this, you may not see all of this just because this is the professor view, not the student view. But that said, it's pretty much the same. And the key thing to press on is lessons, because almost everything is located here. And again, think about this as sort of like a big file cabinet, if you will, or repository, what have you. And then I have these different pages that you can go to with more information. So we're just going to walk through this. Trip Essentials. Click on Trip Essentials, and here are kind of like the key documents. So here's our itinerary, and any of these you can hit this download, and I'll do it just so you can see it. Hit the download. You can see it goes down here, kind of shows up down there, and then you click here and say open, and then if you open it, then you could print this. Right over here there's printing, and my picture's in the way, but there's a print button and what have you. So you can see here we have the itinerary. Keep an eye on this. It might change a little bit, not a lot, but I always put the newest version date right there, so you know what's the most recent version. Here's frequently asked questions. People ask about money, credit cards, computers, So I give you some basic information there to think about the trip. Then we have here your pre-trip checklist, things you got to do. Here's a packing list for you. People seem that can be helpful, so you know what to bring. Obviously, you're not going to pack for a while, but just to kind of get a sense of that. Down the road, I will put a very detailed itinerary down. You can see this is minute by minute broken down for every single day. This is a past one. I won't do this yet because we don't have mass times yet. That won't be done until 2 months before we leave. Can we register or reserve? That's the word I want. Reserve mass times. So I can't really do that last detailed itinerary, but it'll give you a sense of it. All right, so that's Trip Essentials. If you click back on Lessons, we go back again to sort of this file cabinet. Then if we go into the next cabinet drawer, Organizational Meetings. So here is all the information you need for these meetings. The difference here from that last page is I have more pages underneath this. So think about this as a file, right? You have a file, and within that file you have a bunch of pages. Well, that's what we have here. And I have a page for every single meeting, right? So we're meeting 1. Well, here's meeting 2. And these are structured going forward. All these, 4 next meetings are all kind of structured the same way. I give you a little bit of an introduction of what we're going to try to do in this meeting. Then I'll give you the session goals, and I'll divide that into the content. So next meeting, we're going to talk about Old Testament history. And then we always have some trip coordination things to walk through and work through. And that's always the case. Education, coordination, or organization. The 2 parts of our meetings. And then here's the work you got to do. You got to watch these 4 videos. And you can see each one's about 15 minutes long. That one's a little longer, but it's about an hour. And then here's stuff I say, hey, we're going to talk about this material here. You don't have to, if you want to read it, fine, but we're going to work through that. This is coordination stuff. So just so it's here, so you can have it. You can print it up and bring it to the session. I'll always have copies too, in case you forget to bring it. And then I always have what I call formational reflection. Because we are going on pilgrimage. It's not just a course, right? We're trying to go deeper within our faith life. And so these questions are ways, particularly related to the, sometimes they'll be not just video lectures, but readings or what have you. But mainly it's video lectures to make it real accessible. But these would be questions sort of allowing you to ponder some of the material that's in here and connect it to your spiritual life a little bit. And then I always have optional materials. You don't have to read this at all, but some people are like, man, it'd be really nice. We're going to talk about the Old Testament. And in the video lectures, I give a little quick thumbnail sketch of some key events within salvation history and what have you. But maybe you're like, it'd be nice to remind myself about the different books of the Bible and what's in them. Well, this is a really nice resource from Christopher Stanley's book. It gives a little thumbnail sketch for each book of the Bible. And so that can be really helpful. Like, oh yeah, good. Gives me a nice quick overview. This is 11 pages, I think. So not too onerous. All right. So this is what we have here then in organizational meetings. For every meeting, there will be a different page that has what you have to do to get ready and the material you need to bring with you, or that we'll cover during the meeting. Then, and this I think is really helpful, I'm pretty proud of this biblical site overview. What I've done is every site we're going to visit, all the major sites we're going to visit, biblical sites, I give you links to different resources. So you could really dig deeply into these sites, and it makes it really easy to kind of explore these, where we're going to go, so you have a firmer idea of them in your mind before we go. So these are mainly websites that you can go to. So here you can see Bethsaida. I dug at Bethsaida for, I think I dug there 7 times. It's now, that dig's done now, but so here you hear, just a kind of a popular web page about Bethsaida's significance within the biblical tradition, the Old New Testament. Let's get rid of that. I got a lot of windows open, don't I? What else is in here besides the so I kind of give you informational websites, and you'll see visual resources. This is a cool one for almost every site. I have a link here from the Virtual World Project. This was done by 2 professors at Creighton University. They went over to all these biblical sites, and they used 360 cameras. So here's Bethsaida, and at the art to take pictures. They took pictures with these 360 cameras of these different archaeological sites. So you can move around here just by using your cursor. You're going to get seasick. This is the gate complex at Bethsaida. This is an 8th century BC complex. So this is what? Over almost 3,000 years old. Almost. A little short of that. This Bethsaida at that period in time was not a Jewish city. And so here's a stela, and here's a little altar. This is the gate. You'd come in this way and walk up into the city, and you'd give your homage to the god there, the moon god right there. These are called stela. These stones you can't see it here, but there's a god figure, a moon god figure that's chiseled into this stela. Okay, so you can walk through this site. You can go around, see different things. If you, let's see, is that going to do it for me? Then you have here like different things you can look at. It's also usually, it says, oh, I know what it is. If you go down here, see this little, looks like a map, so that's what it's supposed to represent. It gives you a map, and you can click on any one of these, and it'll take you to different parts of the site. And there'll be zones. These zones relate to different chronological periods. So let's go to zone 3. This is actually the Christian period. And it's going to say, oh, here, this is kind of a fun one. This is the time of Jesus. And this is kind of a fun one because this is a picture of, let's find it. Like I said, you can get kind of seasick with this. Whoa. Kind of zoom around a little bit so I can find this. But this is a wine cellar. They actually uncovered a wine cellar. Think about Jesus changing the water to wine, and of course, the use of wine within the Eucharist. Well, here is, if I find it, I've gone down too far. There's a wine cellar that they uncovered. I'm not going to waste my time and yours searching for it. It might be, there it is. Is it? I think it's right down here. Anyway, they found these big casks of wine in there. And there's actually was some wine residue left over. And because it dried up, even though it had been sealed in there, undisturbed for all these years. And the archaeologists, I'm told, mixed that residue with water and drank it just to try it. I heard it wasn't very good, but anyway. So you can explore almost every site using this virtual world tour. There's also videos here. Here's Sarah Yeomans, her YouTube video where she talks about Bethsaida. She walks you through the site. So I have a number of things like that on this. So these are visual, and then we have more scholarly material. I always have the PDF if this is like the archaeological Bible, I would say, of the Holy Land. Jerome Murphy O'Connor died just a couple of years ago. Wonderful priest, scholar, and he developed this book called the Holy Land, the Oxford Archaeological Guide. Every site he looks at the archaeology there, and so I have a PDF of each chapter related to these biblical sites. So you don't even have to go to the library to get his book. You can see here's the best cited chapter. So for every site that he provides some commentary on, I've had this scanned and imported for you. And again, you could download this. You can click the button and download it so that you could print it up if you so desired. All right, so we've gone through Trip Essentials. We've seen organizational meetings, biblical sites, Insight Talks. What I've done for the trip, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, you need a Kindle or iPad or some sort of electronic device that you can take with you around to the different biblical sites, because you're going to download all of these different PDFs onto that device. Because when we show up at that device, here's my Kindle. I'll say, okay, pull up Insight Talk. Let's just do day 2, right? And you'll pull up that and you'll look at it, and I'll say, okay, now here we are at the city of David, right? So here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let me do this so you can kind of see what this looks like. Open when done. Hopefully it's good. So you can see what it looks like. So you can just, I'll update these obviously for 2023. But this is the last time we went to the Holy Land since we've had COVID. Has canceled the last 3 trips. But here, I'll give you the objective for the day. I say here, the objective is to experience the dynamic history of Jerusalem, especially the city of David, which in so many ways is the nexus of the unfolding story of God's relationship with humanity. And then here's sort of an overview of what we're going to do. So you got a sense of that. And I give you the schedule. Here's what we're going to go first. We're going to be seeing these different sites, and then here's reminders of things to bring. So bring your Kindle or iPad, bring your student ID, because we're going to go to the city of David. There's entrance fee there. I get a discount if you all have your student IDs. Bring a flashlight, because we're going to walk through Hezekiah's tunnel if you choose to do that. You don't have to if you're claustrophobic, but you're going to need your tunnel to walk through that. And since that's full of water, it's a water tunnel, you're going to need your water shoes. Okay, so those water shoes are on the packing list. Okay, so this is what it looks like. These are all hot linked. So let's see. If you go to City of David, you land here, and then you can see if I kind of scroll over here to the left, I have different things to look at. If we were to hit, if I go back up, just to give you some examples of what you can see here. Maybe this is better. Right now it's a modern city, but I say, okay, we're talking, let's see what this would have looked like in David's time. Boom, here we go. Here's based upon the archaeology, here is a pictorial presentation of what it looked like in David's time, what the city of David, Jerusalem, looked like in his day. So we can talk about that, And sometimes I give you, just to give you some other examples of what's in here, there might be, maps of things. Well, you can see this. There's the Hezekiah's tunnel. I have sometimes archaeological artifacts that we can talk about. I have, and then even, is that back up here? I even have some video links so you can watch the video of different things. Like here, or even reconstruction. A lot of times when we go to these biblical sites, you're like, well, this looks like a pile of rocks. And so I try to give you different artists, based on the scholarship, artist renditions of what it looked like, let's say, in Jesus' time. So the pool of Siloam, right, where Jesus heals the blind man. What did it look like in Jesus' day? We're going to go there, but there's only like one little corner of this that's been excavated, and but but now you'll be able to kind of say, oh, okay, now I kind of get a sense of what it looked like in Jesus' day. And then I also provide biblical texts, relevant to each site. So you don't have to carry your Bible around, just this, your iPad or your Kindle. Okay, so those are the Insight talks, but you could read through this stuff right now, even though I'll be updating those, the material's not going to change too much. Chorazim, we're going to be digging at Chorazim. So we'll have underneath here information about that. So wherever we dig, I put it there. Then Mass and prayer information. So if you click on this one, every year I have a student participant develop a prayer. And for the pilgrimage, we share this with other people in the community so they can pray with us. We pray this prayer whenever we kind of make major movements within the trip. So we use this prayer fairly regularly during the trip. And so we, here's that prayer. I also talk about, we will do morning and evening prayer. So I'll actually put up here a link that you can download from my breviary, the office, and that's what we'll pray. We'll pray the office. Later on, we'll put up a Mass and prayer schedule. So, when we end up having Mass at Capernaum, you may have a special devotion to that side or what have you, or just think you'd like to be the reader for that day. So I'll give you a chance to sign up to be the reader or at different sites, and that'll get posted up here. Also, we don't have to do the readings of the day when we go to these holy sites. They're votive masses, so we'll use the readings from that have been approved for these different biblical sites. And so that's what you find here, all the Franciscan sites. Not all the sites are run by the Franciscans, but most of them are. And so any ones that's run by the Franciscans, you will find, this is just a big PDF, this basically lectionary. It is what it is, a lectionary for each of the different sites. So you could scroll through here and say, I wonder what the reading options are for Tabgha, or whatever, or Mount of Beatitudes, whatever, and you'd find them here. Then you will be given a prayer journal. As I said, we follow the Gospel of Matthew in terms of how we do this pilgrimage. And so I use different readings from that Gospel as sort of a reflection point for you. And then give you an example, just to kind of scroll down. Probably going too fast, it has to catch up to me. We have blank pages in here too, so you can write down your thoughts and reflections. So here's, Sunday. Again, this will be updated once get closer to the departure. But here's the reading, Matthew 2:1 through 9a, and I give you a little introduction. I give you the actual scripture. I give you a way to meditate, to think about it, some questions for reflection, then some ideas for journaling, and then these blank pages for journaling. If you're taking this experience for credit, you're required to submit your journal at the end of the trip. Obviously, if you're not, it's totally optional. So that's the prayer and Mass information. You can kind of dig through that if you'd like. There's also a songbook in there that we have you download. Then we'll talk a little bit about people taking this experience for credit. There's some material there for them, but we won't dig into that. So that's the almost everything underneath. That's everything underneath lessons, and almost everything you need to access is underneath this lessons tab. There are a couple other tabs. I'll point out conferences, because if you're going to attend the meetings via Zoom, here's how you access them. You would come to this page, conferences, and then there'll be a button here that you will click on. It won't say start conference, but I think it says join conference for students. And you just click on it, and then it will load Zoom and get you there. But that's how you'll access the meetings. They're all set there, right? So you're ready to go. You don't have to worry about any of these other tabs. Really, there's you could look at roster. I don't know what the student view is, if you get to see everybody's picture or not, but and names, but I don't have the student view, so maybe that's not a possibility. But if you do go back to the dashboard, one other final thing to point out, and here I give you a little overview for you, if you about what you can see there. If you click read more, you can see the full story about lessons, conferences, roster tab. Last thing is right here, you can use this space. Any one of you can use this space to share something, to make a comment, or hey, I found this great resource here, or whatever, or hey, I got a question, anybody can answer this. You can certainly email me with questions, but this would be more to the whole group. If you want to give a shout out about something or whatever, you can do it through here. You just post and then type in and then hit post, and again it'll be posted here, and you can set up Populi to send you an email when something new appears here. That's there's a way to do that. Okay, so that's Populi and how we're going to use it to help us prepare for the trip. Might as well just X out of it. I gotta move myself to X out of there. Good. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. We're almost done with this presentation. You do have a choice between taking this experience for credit or non-credit. As it says here in the first bullet point, participants are not required to earn credits through the trip, but all group members have the opportunity to earn graduate credits if so desired. There are 2 3-credit academic courses that underlie the trip. You can choose to earn all 6, or you could just say, well, I'll just earn one of those 2 courses and you earn 3 credits. There's no extra charge for that. The tuition's already folded within the program fee, so it's in that sense free. Now, if you're a non-credit participant, you're still expected to view those video lectures that are associated with those preparation meetings. Again, that's sort of the foundational knowledge that I'll assume everybody has when we are over in Israel. Also, you're expected to respond in a timely fashion to any communications from trip administrators, submitting certain forms or responding to emails. That's still required from here to the departure time. And once we're on the trip, you're expected to participate in all the activities. So we expect you to go to Mass, to come to prayer, obviously visit the sites. Obviously if you have health issues, that's a different thing. But, expect full participation to create a good learning environment and good spiritual experience too. If you do decide to earn the credits, if you're only going to earn 3, you wouldn't have to do all these things. They're kind of broken out between the 2 courses. But if you're earning all 6 credits, you have to, first off, regardless if you're earning 3 or 6 credits, you have to attend all the preparatory meetings and view the associated lectures. You need to complete the pre-trip reading assignments and participate in 2 Populi pre-trip discussions. There's 1 connected to each course. Those are actually kind of fun discussion forums. I think people like them. And you need to prepare, again, if you're only going to earn 3 credits, you don't necessarily have to do this, but if you're earning all 6, basically if you're earning the credits for the archaeology and the Bible course, you present an oral report at a biblical site. You'll submit 3 Facebook field reports. So basically, we have a Facebook page for the trip. We've done this every year. What's nice about that is anyone can post at any time. So even people that aren't taking this for credit can post. What's nice about this is, you have friends and family who want to follow the trip, and you're going to be feeling pretty, we're going to see a lot, and there may be days you don't want to email them, oh, we did this. You can point them to this Facebook page and just say, hey, if you want to follow the trip, here's where the information will be, because somebody will post, because I'm going to require the people taking this experience for credit to post. Anybody else is free to post it at any time, pictures, comments. So you can just point them there and they'll get a sense of the trip. What's great about this is we have a lot of followers, past alumni, or even just people in the general community who will follow our trip. So that's kind of nice. Also, you'll, as I kind of already mentioned, you'll complete that pilgrimage journal and submit it after trip. You're allowed to, one thing I say to people is just share what you feel comfortable with. That's why I don't make you turn that journal in at the end of the trip, but give you some time before it's due in case you want to edit things. Maybe there's some things personal. You don't have to share that. You can decide what you're going to share with the instructor for grading purposes. Even if you're not going to take this for credit, I'd really encourage you to fill out that pilgrimage journal, because you're going to find out when you get home, everything's going to kind of blur together. And it's great to have that resource. Oh yeah, that's what was going on at Capernaum. That's what I was thinking and praying about there. It's going to just give you a resource to go back to over and over again and plumb more deeply when you and it'll kind of make the experience deeper too. As many of you know who have journaled as part of your prayer life, it just enriches that so much. So I'd encourage, not required for non-credit people, but still might encourage you to think about doing that. And then finally, there'll be a summative project, and it can take a number of different forms. I really encourage creativity in what you might do there. It could be a paper. It could be a presentation you're going to give to your parish about the experience. I've had people write articles for their local diocesan paper, and I count that as the summative project, about the experience. So we can talk more about that, but there's a lot of formats that can take. A couple key items required for the trip, just to make sure everybody's set for this. First off, your passport needs to be valid, and we look at this too, but just so you know, it has to be valid 6 months from the date of return back from Israel. So we're returning, June 12th? It has to be 6 months from then. It still has to be valid, or else they will not allow you to enter. So you can't say, oh, yeah, we returned June 12th, and this is still valid through August 23rd. They won't let you in. Okay. We try to look at that with you. That's one reason we ask for your, a couple of reasons why I ask for your passport, but that's one thing we look at. But if you know that your passport's not going to be valid past that 6 months, then, start renewing it now. The other thing is you do need, because of those Insight talks, you need a Kindle or an iPad or a similar device. Not your phone, that's going to be too small, but some sort, this is a Kindle. And one reason I talk about Kindles is these are really cheap. This is a 7-inch. This is the Kindle Fire 7, which means it's 7 inches across. This is right now on Amazon, it's $59. If you want the 8-inch, I think that's $79. But these are really powerful devices. I use this a lot for a lot of things when I travel because it's so compact, right? But this will be a big enough screen that when I have you look at those different Insight talks, you can see them and it makes sense. If you just bring your phone and try to use that, it's just too small and you really can't see what you need to see. Now you do need to bring a breviary, and you could download onto your iPhone or smartphone the iBreviary, which is probably the best app to use for this purpose, and it's free on your phone. But you could also download it here on your Kindle or iPad. You can just bring it like this, or I got this nice cover for a couple bucks. It just goes in there, and this is great, right? Because now it's nice and protected, still very thin, and easy to use on the site. Okay. And then you need to, since we're going to be on an archaeological dig, heartily encourage you to make sure your tetanus should be up to date. And we also need to be up to date with our COVID vaccines. We've talked about that on the application. Okay. So, kind of bringing it home then. In the seminary world, we talk about the 4 dimensions of formation: intellectual, spiritual, pastoral, and human. So, but this doesn't just apply to seminaries. This is the Christian life requires formation in these 4 areas. Of course, you're going to have ways in which you'll be formed intellectually. You're going to learn about biblical sites, archaeology, interreligious dialogue. We're going to meet with Jewish families, representatives of Christians in the Holy Land, and Muslims to talk about their experience. And even with the visits to the synagogue and the mosque, you'll get a sense of those faiths. And so you can earn these 6 credits through these preparatory readings, journal writing, term papers, etc. That's pretty clear, right? But you're also going to grow spiritually, right? You're going to encounter the biblical narratives and the life of Christ through these daily mass, daily office, reflection and prayer at the biblical sites. You're going to very much deepen your spiritual life, I think, through this experience. You also have pastoral implications. You're going to be able to teach and preach the faith much more vigorously. And you'll have learned how to engage in interreligious dialogue as well. In terms of human formation, you're going to be engaging in a group of diverse people and learning how to build a sense of community and achieving a common project. Even though we will be very different, how do we come together and experience the crystallization of what we all aspire to as Christians, which is to be part of the body of Christ. So in many ways, this trip to the Holy Land will help you become grounded in the 5th gospel, right? That's oftentimes the Holy Land is called the 5th gospel. It gives a new means by which to enter into the revelation of Christ, because you'll get to know him much more fully by walking in his footsteps. So therefore, in the end, what we're trying to do is prepare to move from the what do you seek, which if you look at John's gospel, the first words Jesus asks of his, when in John's gospel, Jesus is walking by John the Baptist. And John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God." And two of his disciples goes trotting out on after Jesus. And they kind of just, stalk him, staying behind him. And he finally turns around and says, "What do you seek?" And they ask, "Rabbi, where do you live?" And he says, "Come and see." Well, that's what we're doing. What do you seek? We want to know where you live. Come and see. Interesting enough, at the end of John's gospel, when the angel is at the tomb and Jesus has resurrected, and then as Mary Magdalene has come to the tomb in distraught and she encounters the risen Lord, he says to her, "Who do you seek? Who do you seek?" And I think that's the point of this preparation work, is we want to have enough knowledge, the what, to encounter the who. So hopefully this is helpful and is understanding what we're going to do in the next couple months to get ready for the trip. And if you have any questions, certainly let me know. And we'll be unpacking a lot of this information as we go along. So don't feel overwhelmed because we have a couple months to kind of get it in order. So looking forward to the journey with you. Take care. See you later.